The morning sun cast a bright glow as Emily stepped out of the taxi, clutching a small brown purse to her chest. She stood before a colossal glass building that shimmered in the light. This was the city's most famous luxury car dealership, a haven for businessmen, celebrities, and the ultra-rich where cars cost more than most houses. Emily had never been here before, but today was different. Her husband, Michael, had been dreaming of a new car, and she wanted to make that dream a reality. She wasn't dressed in designer labels, just a simple blue dress and well-worn shoes. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and her face held a natural, gentle kindness. As she stepped inside, a soft chime announced her arrival. The air was rich with the scent of polished leather and fresh coffee. Sleek, expensive cars stood in perfect gleaming rows, looking like works of art under the bright showroom lights. Near the front, a group of sharply dressed salesmen were chatting. As their eyes fell on Emily, their welcoming smiles tightened just a little. One whispered to another, "She must be lost." His colleague chuckled under his breath. "Maybe she's looking for the bus stop." Emily walked towards them, her steps light and quiet. She offered a polite smile. "Good morning," she began. "I'd like to see your new Rolls Royce models." The salesman closest to her blinked, his professional demeanor shifting to one of open mockery. "Ma'am, are you sure you're in the right place? A Rolls Royce is quite expensive." Emily simply nodded. "Yes, I'm aware. I'd just like to take a look." The man let out a soft, condescending laugh. "Take a look," he repeated, glancing back at his colleagues for support. "We don't typically let people just look, ma'am. These are very serious purchases." Another salesman, eager to join in, grinned and said loudly, "Perhaps she meant to visit our used car lot across the street." The group erupted in quiet laughter. Emily's smile faltered for a moment, but she held her composure. "I'm not looking for a used car," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I'm here because my husband has been considering a new one. I wanted to surprise him." The main salesman raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Oh, really? And what does your husband do?" His tone wasn't curious, it was a challenge. "He runs a business," Emily replied, choosing not to elaborate. The man smirked. "I see. And does he know you're here looking at cars that are worth more than some businesses?" His comment drew another round of snickers from his co-workers. One of them whispered, just loud enough for her to hear, "Maybe she's just trying to get some pictures for her social media." Emily felt a warm blush creep up her neck. She looked down for a second before meeting his gaze again. "I'm not here for pictures, sir. I'm serious." The salesman sighed dramatically, pretending to be overwhelmed with important tasks. "Listen, ma'am, we have a lot of serious clients to attend to. We can't just let anyone wander around the showroom." A young receptionist nearby looked visibly uncomfortable. She started to speak up, but the salesman silenced her with a sharp raise of his hand. "It's fine. I'll handle this." He turned back to Emily, his tone final. "Please, if you're not here to buy, I must ask you to leave. This isn't a place for window shopping." For a moment, Emily just stood there, the sound of their whispers and laughter cutting into her like tiny shards of glass. She wasn't angry, just deeply hurt. She had never been treated with such disrespect. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "I didn't mean to waste your time. I just wanted to see." The salesman offered a quick, insincere smile. "That's all right, ma'am," he said, waving his hand dismissively towards the exit. "The door is that way." Emily nodded slowly and turned to leave. As she walked away, their laughter followed her. "Unbelievable," one of them said. "People think that just because they can dream, they belong here." Another added, "She probably doesn't even own a car." Once outside, the gentle breeze felt strangely cold. She paused on the sidewalk, blinking against the bright sun. Through the glass, she could see the salesman, standing proudly among the luxury cars, one of them shaking his head in amusement. Emily took a shaky breath. She wasn't thinking about revenge. All she felt was a profound sadness that people could be so quick to judge based on appearances alone. She walked slowly down the street, her reflection in the dealership window looking small and fragile. she whispered to herself. Why is it that kindness costs nothing, yet so few people choose to spend it? At the end of the block, she glanced back one last time. The hurt in her eyes had been replaced by a quiet, steady resolve. She pulled out her phone and called her husband. Michael? She said softly, do you have a minute? I need to tell you something that just happened. That evening, Michael found her at the kitchen table, a cup of tea sitting untouched before her. Her eyes were tired, but a new strength shone through. She recounted the entire story, the condescending looks, the mockery, the humiliation. Michael listened in silence, his jaw tightening with every word. When she finished, she looked at him, her voice quiet. I didn't tell them who you were, I just left, but maybe I shouldn't have. Michael reached across the table and took her hand. You did the right thing, he said, his voice calm and even. You never have to prove anything to people like that. Emily looked down at their joined hands. It just hurt. They made me feel so small. He managed a faint smile. Then tomorrow, let's remind them that small doesn't mean powerless. That night, Emily lay awake, the city lights flickering outside. The scene at the dealership replayed in her mind. The cold smiles, the dismissive gestures. But underneath the hurt, a new feeling was taking root. It wasn't anger. It was anticipation. Because tomorrow she wouldn't be walking into that dealership alone. Tomorrow the same doors that were closed to her would swing wide open. And the same men who laughed at her would learn a powerful lesson. True worth isn't measured by the clothes you wear or the money in your wallet. It's measured by the character you show. A small smile touched her lips as she closed her eyes. Tomorrow, she whispered into the darkness. They'll see who they really turned away. Her heart felt lighter, not with thoughts of revenge, but with the quiet knowledge that sometimes the most powerful statements are made without saying a word. That night, sleep wouldn't come for Emily. Her husband Michael's calm face and his words kept replaying in her mind. They judged you by your dress, not your worth. The next morning she woke earlier than usual. Sunlight streamed through the window, and while the city outside was already bustling, her heart felt a strange stillness. It wasn't anger or a desire for revenge, but a quiet, powerful anticipation. When she stepped out of the bedroom, Michael was already dressed in a perfectly pressed suit, his expression unreadable. Are you ready? He asked softly. Emily hesitated. Are we really going back there? She whispered. He gave her a faint smile. Oh yes, we're going there. An hour later, a gleaming black Rolls Royce Phantom turned onto the very street that had witnessed her humiliation. The massive car glided forward like royalty arriving at a palace, its engine purring low and deep, drawing stares from everyone nearby. The dealership employees, the same ones who had laughed at her, looked up immediately. One of them rushed to the door grinning. Looks like we've got a serious buyer today. As the Rolls Royce stopped at the front entrance, a uniformed chauffeur stepped out and hurried to open the rear door. The salesmen straightened their ties, eager to impress. But when the door opened, the sight froze them in place. Emily stepped out first, wearing the exact same blue dress as yesterday. Her calm eyes met theirs, but she said nothing. She just stood tall, graceful, and silent. Behind her, Michael emerged from the car, the quiet confidence of wealth surrounding him like an aura. The manager hurried forward, his voice overly cheerful. Good morning, sir. Welcome. What can we show you today? Michael's expression remained unchanged. Yesterday, he began, his voice calm but cutting. My wife came here to ask about a Rolls Royce. He paused, letting his words sink in. She was insulted, mocked, and thrown out of your store. The laughter that had once filled the hall vanished. The color drained from their faces. The salesman who had laughed the loudest now stood frozen, unable to speak. Sir, we didn't know, he stammered. That's right, Michael replied, his gaze unwavering. You didn't know, and that's the problem. You never even tried to. You looked at her and decided she wasn't worth your time. The silence was heavy and sharp. Emily then looked around the showroom, her voice quiet but firm. "Yesterday you told me this wasn't a place for people like me," she said softly. "But the truth is, kindness belongs everywhere, especially in places like this." The manager swallowed hard. "Ma'am, we truly apologize. It was a misunderstanding." Emily shook her head gently. "No, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was judgment." Michael gestured toward their car. "This Rolls Royce belongs to her," he said calmly. "And I wanted her to decide where to buy it, but after yesterday it won't be from here." Gasps filled the air. The manager stepped forward desperately. "Sir, please, we can make it right." Michael simply raised a hand, his voice final. "You can't make right what pride has already ruined." He turned to Emily. "Let's go." She nodded quietly and began walking back to the car. Her heels clicked softly on the showroom floor, the same floor she had walked in shame, but today, every step felt like power. She didn't glare or smirk. She just walked with dignity. As Michael held the door for her, Emily turned around one last time. Her voice was gentle, but her words left a mark. "A person's worth isn't shown in what they wear or drive," she said. "It's shown in how they treat others. Remember that." The chauffeur closed the door, and the Rolls Royce rolled away smoothly, its reflection forcing everyone inside to see themselves clearly. The salesman who had mocked her whispered, "That woman, she could have bought the whole showroom." The manager sighed, his voice hollow. "And she still had more class than all of us combined." Inside the car, Michael took Emily's hand. "You handled that perfectly," he said. She smiled faintly. "I didn't need to shout. Their silence was enough." He smiled back, full of pride. "You showed them what true elegance looks like." Emily looked at him, her voice filled with gentle strength. "I just wanted them to know. You never lose anything by being kind, but you can lose everything by being cruel." The woman they had mocked as too simple had just delivered the loudest lesson without ever raising her voice. She didn't humiliate them. She educated them. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the glass walls of the car dealership, but it brought no warmth. The mood inside was as cold and heavy as a winter fog. All the laughter and smug jokes from the day before had vanished, replaced by nervous whispers and uneasy glances. Every single employee was on edge, haunted by the memory of the woman they had so casually mocked, the woman who turned out to be the wife of a billionaire. The manager stood stiffly behind his desk, shuffling papers as if he were busy, but the slight tremor in his hands betrayed his anxiety. The staff couldn't stop replaying the scene in their minds, Emily walking out with quiet dignity, leaving them frozen in a cocktail of shock and shame. Their arrogance hadn't just cost them a massive sale, it had cost them something far more valuable, their pride. Across town, Emily was in a different world. She sat by the window in her spacious home, sipping tea and gazing out at her sun-drenched garden. The gentle morning breeze brushed against her face. She wasn't plotting revenge or gloating over their mistake. Her heart was calm, but her mind quietly replayed the events of the past 2 days. She wasn't angry. She was reflective. "I never wanted to embarrass them," she thought to herself. "I just wanted them to see." Just then, Michael walked into the room, a small, knowing smile on his face. "The dealership called this morning," he said, placing his phone on the table. "They're practically begging for forgiveness." Emily looked up, her eyes soft but unwavering. "Forgiveness is easy," she said quietly, "but change is much harder." Michael let out a soft chuckle. "And that," he said, "is what makes you stronger than all of them combined." Later that afternoon, they decided to visit a different luxury car dealership. The moment they stepped inside, the experience was a world away. A young saleswoman greeted them with a warm, genuine smile. "Good afternoon, sir, ma'am. Welcome," she said, her kindness immediately putting them at ease. She offered them water, listened patiently to what they were looking for, and treated them with an air of sincere respect. Emily couldn't help but smile back. "Thank you," she said. It's so nice to be treated like a person, not a price tag. The saleswoman's response was simple yet profound. That's our job, ma'am. Everyone deserves respect. Those words struck a chord with Emily. She realized that true kindness isn't about where you work or what you sell. It's about who you are. After they finalized the purchase of a stunning new Rolls Royce, Michael had a special request. He insisted the car be delivered that very evening. A few hours later, as the sun began to set, the powerful roar of the new engine echoed through the city streets. The car pulled up directly in front of the very dealership that had humiliated Emily just one day before. Inside, the employees' heads snapped towards the window, their jaws dropping in unison. There it was, the magnificent car they had lost, gleaming under the warm sunset, its polished surface reflecting their own stunned faces. Emily stepped out of the passenger side, as graceful and composed as ever. The manager stumbled outside, his voice shaky. "Ma'am, sir, please, about yesterday." Emily gently held up a hand, cutting him off. "There's no need for that," she said softly. "I'm not here for apologies." Michael looked at the flustered manager with a calm, steady gaze. "We just wanted to stop by and say thank you," he said. The manager stared back, utterly bewildered. "Thank you?" he stammered. "Yes," Michael confirmed, a faint smile playing on his lips. "If you hadn't treated my wife the way you did, we might have never discovered which companies still value basic human respect." The words landed with more force than any insult ever could. Emily added gently, "You lost a sale, but I hope you gained a lesson." The manager nodded slowly, the weight of his guilt visible in his eyes. "We did, ma'am," he whispered. "We really did." Emily offered a faint, forgiving smile. "Then it was worth it," she said, before turning back to her new car. As the Rolls Royce glided away into the golden light of dusk, the dealership staff watched in silence. The showroom that once echoed with their mockery now echoed with regret. One of the younger employees whispered to the others, "She could have destroyed us, but she didn't." The manager sighed, a deep, heavy sound. "That's why she is who she is," he said. "And we're still just learning." Inside the car, Michael reached over and took Emily's hand. "You know," he said softly, "you didn't just change their minds today. You changed mine too." She looked at him, curious. "How so?" He squeezed her hand, his eyes filled with love. "You reminded me that real power doesn't need to shout. It forgives." Emily looked out the window at the glowing city lights, her own reflection shimmering on the glass. "Then maybe forgiveness," she whispered, "is the most expensive luxury of all." As their car disappeared into the evening traffic, its polished surface caught the last rays of sunlight. A perfect reflection of Emily's quiet strength, shining brightly without making a sound. The woman they called too simple had proven that grace is far stronger than wealth and respect is the true, undeniable mark of class.